Hello there. As you can notice, as you probably have noticed, that I like putting pictures up of my room. It's in my bedroom, the room with all the lights in it, and candles, and yeah, every night, kind of like a routine I've gotten in the last, year or maybe longer, is, before I go to sleep, I have this routine where I go to my room, put candles on for a few hours, bit of sage, ylang ylang, which is essential oils, and sometimes I'll do a meditation, actually on my talks, and put this on with a bit of the music that I use is copyright free, and sometimes it's music from YouTube, from watching someone, like an artist. There's an artist called Tim Janis who makes relaxing music, and this journey began from an unexpected spiritual awakening. For those of you that might have just stumbled across my website or talk, the Shaun Taylor Show, all started for me when at the age of 24, and I had an unexpected spiritual awakening. I sat down one day and just had enough, and it was such an authentic moment that it obviously manifested this awakening. But ultimately, what's awakening you, you are, is the universe. It's the universe, but we're always in communication with the universe. That's ultimately what's awakening you. It's an activation, but it was that I accessed that activation when I had enough, because the truth is that whatever you do interacts with the universe, and it all interacts with each other. It's like working with each other. Talking about this, I'm probably safer if I talk about stuff like this than I would be if I spoke about vaccines. Having said that, I'm not an expert on vaccines, but what I do know, well, I'm not going to say anything about vaccines, because if this is going to go on YouTube, it won't be played. It won't be allowed. But ultimately, the bottom line is that there's an awakening happening. And all I will say regarding the system is that the system that we think is the system isn't even the system. I was talking about the universe. And it's very important on these talks that I talk about the deep core of what I'm getting at, right? So I'm getting to the bottom of it. Basically everything comes from the universe. But what comes before that? We all know that everything's created by energy, and what it does is it produces a simulation. The simulation theory is very strong, and that's where everything comes from. So the real system is those that understand about the simulation, and I imagine they will. And if you look around you, I notice it with the virtue signalers in the shops. Virtue signaling is those people, they'll use hand sanitizer. See, in a shop, just before they get into a shop, and when you watch them, they're looking around to see if other people are looking at them. Virtue signaling is based on attention seeking. But how does this relate to what I'm talking about? Well, I'm talking about how everything comes from the top, right? But there's a reason why it comes from the top. The reason that everything is happening the way it is so that we learn. That's the whole point of it. But regarding the simulation, just to quickly go back to that, well, everything's energy, and it's orchestrated into like a computer game. That's what it is. Many scientists believe in this, and a lot of scientific research is into this. So it's not some conspiracy theory, it's proper scientific stuff. I watched a science documentary about over a year ago, and they were talking about basically this same thing. And many people believe in it. But the reason I brought that up is important to talk about, because it relates to the system. See, I've got to make sure that when I'm talking on YouTube, I know what I can talk about and what I can't talk about. You're not allowed to talk about anything that threatens their agenda. So I can't talk about anything like that. But I think when we're talking about certain things that are censored, we don't have... If you're having trouble, with censorship, when you talk about the deep core of it, which is actually the spiritual side, the people that are doing the censorship don't understand about that stuff. AI doesn't understand about that stuff. But it all comes from that. And this is the deep core of what's going on. And I'll tell you the reason why as well. It's all came from my unexpected spiritual awakening. It's all meant to be as it is. And the reason it has to be as it is so that you learn. Like I was saying a few minutes ago. You have to learn. And so that's why you have the bad situation. But it leads to understanding. Right? That's what it's all about, understanding. That's the thing, it's all about understanding. But back to what I was saying about censorship. There's a way to beat censorship. If you talk about... You never see Eckhart Tolle being banned, do you? No, you don't. You don't see that. That's because... What are they going to say? They don't understand about that kind of stuff. But that is the solution to all the world's problems. If everyone was to sit and be present and heal within, all the world's problems are gone. The reason why there's no external peace is because there's no inner peace. Once we all find inner peace, we have world peace. It's very simple. For example, you take me. I was a druggie, alcoholic. Well, not an alcoholic, but I drank alcohol as well, and don't do any of that stuff now. And it got less and less as I went within with this unexpected spiritual awakening. I sat down one day and just had enough. And then after that moment, an awakening started to manifest. I didn't know what was happening at the start. I thought I was going mad. I didn't know anything of this stuff existed. Didn't know about Buddhism. Then I had to go on the internet for years, and I was trying to find out people that had similar experiences. I thought I was like turning into some like human angel. And in essence, that's what happened. You're returning to source, angelic powers, which is all within you. And what is angelic powers? Well, it's just the source where everything comes from. The source, angelicness is the source of where everything comes from. Your connection to God. And there's a tiny space in your heart, in your physical heart, that is the doorway to God. And in essence, we're all connected to that, and we're all, like I was saying earlier, when you have a spiritual awakening, it's the activation. And that's why I started to have this perceptions about reality. And it all came because I decided to be present. That moment, or when I had enough, it manifested a spiritual awakening. Like, I was watching Eckhart Tolle talk last week, and he was saying that when a caterpillar becomes a butterfly, it can't stand being a caterpillar anymore, so it has to be a butterfly. That's a spiritual awakening. See, that's ultimately what's going on the planet, and when I talk about this stuff, they can't censor that. Because they've got to have a reason for censoring it, and they don't understand about that kind of stuff. What you got to understand about the system is they're not the brightest. They're not the brightest, and they don't understand about spiritual things, right? But when you're talking about vaccines, or they want everybody getting vaccinated, so you're not allowed to mention it. You know what I mean? That's the agenda. So the agenda is whatever you're not allowed to speak about, but you can talk about what's beyond the vaccines. What's beyond the vaccines is the force that's doing it. And ultimately, it's the same force. Basically, life is just a dream/movie. And it happens the way it does so that we learn from it. So everything that's going on is so that we learn from it. So in every situation, look at it and say to yourself, what is this trying to teach me? Right? Instead of being anti everything, work with everything. Look at everything because everything is written and is presented to you by source in a symbolic way. That's what I started to perceive just after this awakening. Everything is symbolic. That is how Source or God communicates with you. And ultimately that's what's happening on the planet. We're all going through a mass spiritual awakening. Yes, there's many that aren't awake, and there's some that are awakening. But the awake people are very strong. The non-awake people are the virtue signalers you see in shops, using hand sanitizer. See, if you watch them, you'll notice they look around them to see if anyone else is watching them. So the psychology behind the virtue signaling is it's related to a thing called trauma-based mind control. Basically, just programming people so that they're attention-seeking based. And they set off the trigger and bang. They set off the COVID thing, and look how society has reacted. The more awake people have been calmer in the situation, and the more unconscious people haven't been calmer. They are in absolute hysteria. But you got to look at what are they trying to do with it. Well, they're trying to divide people. Divide and rule. It's an old saying, but that's how it is. Because unity and oneness, awakening, collective consciousness, that is how we defeat it. Because when we're a collective and we say no to these evil forces, they don't have any power, because we are their power. Their power is our compliance to them. So people are the threat to the system is us becoming sovereign, being co-creator beings on the planet. That is their biggest threat. And not being in fear, and being in presence, and being happy ultimately. Because we're only going to be effective whilst we're in fear. But like I said, it's not a separate system that's doing this. It appears that way, but it's actually the same source where everything comes from. So basically it's just a movie, just a dream. And the whole point of the movie/dream is so that you learn in the experience. It's basically just a holographic simulation dream movie that your consciousness is has decided to take part in at this moment, for how it's going to develop you spiritually. And the same source that is doing good things is the same source that's doing bad things. It's like the stars at night. It takes the dark night to manifest the stars so that you even see it. You see, they go together, the opposites go together as one thing. Different shades, they all mix together perfectly, because they are all the same thing, ultimately. But the point of it is to learn and to develop and to grow. That's the whole point of it. And it's all the same source. Doesn't matter which way you turn, it's all the same oneness, all the same source. Because if you think of it, everything has to come from one infinite nothing. And one infinite nothing is the all that is. And that's what we all are. That's what oneness really means. We're all the same infinite nothing. And there's no separation in that. It's just a dream. Just dreams. It's also, when you go deeper with this, like in my spiritual awakening, I start to realise it's a dream of self. That's why at the start I thought I was going mad, and then I found out years later, I stumbled across Buddhism videos on YouTube. And then I found out that, hey, this is not so mad, that what I'm talking about. Then I started to get braver and doing podcasts like this, videos, podcasts. And I've also got a website as well. So that's my way of making a difference, is I don't wear a mask. I've got an exempt badge, which anyone can get, and just push back in any way you can. But ultimately understand that crazy world out there is the old earth, and your reality is the new earth. This is what Dolores Cannon spoke about. It needs to be spoken about even now as she's passed on, because that's ultimately what's happening. We're going into the new earth. Your new earth is you, what you're doing. And as we all step into the new earth within ourselves, the transition is easier. They want you watching television and being in absolute hysteria. Do you know that little girls died in the hands of priests doing exorcisms? So what happened is the little girls didn't die of a demonic possession. Little girls and little children are very influential. You can influence them. And that's what happened. And this is exactly the same thing that's going on right now. It's a psychological operation. A lot of psychology involved. I'm not saying COVID-19 exists or doesn't exist, but there's a lot of psychology involved. Right? So just do what I do. I do a lot of meditation. I don't watch television news. There's some news reporters that I watch, but I don't really watch TV. And these news reporters that I watch, I like Laura Ingraham from Fox News, Tucker Carlson from Fox News. There's some that are decent and will report the truth. But the system at the top just wants you to be in fear. So don't become part of that. Just do what I do. Go within yourself. Understand that's the old earth trying to bring you down. But the whole point of it, like I said earlier, it's a movie. And the whole point of the movie, the simulation movie, is so that you learn from it. So the negative elements push you to going into the positive elements. So there's a point to it. The dual work together in perfect harmony with each other. And they complement each other because ultimately they're the same thing. And I'm just going to leave it there. For latest updates and talks and news and research, everything's on my website. My website address is www.lovelightfamily.com.